2:09 a.m. on 29 March 2019, a fixed surveillance camera outside Bird Dog, 715 Hardin Street, 5 Points, Columbia, South Carolina, records a routine scene. Students moving through pooled streetlight, the curb crowded with small departures. In the frame, Samantha Josephson stands still, her phone screen lighting her hands as she waits. A black sedan pulls into the space beside her. She checks the screen once more, then steps into the rear seat. At first glance, this is just a rideshare pickup. One more person getting home. But if you look closely, the car is wrong, and the moment is final. Here's the bet. Before the next sunset, investigators will stop that same car and find what the camera could not show. The footage captures everything except intent. It also captures the last ordinary gesture of a life, a phone held like a map. Samantha is never seen alive again. On Thursday, 28 March 2019, Samantha Josephson, a senior at the University of South Carolina, goes out with friends in Columbia's 5 Points district. The night is documented in fragments the way most nights are. Calls, short messages, location pings. Her boyfriend, Greg Corbishley, is in Mount Pleasant. He stays connected through phone calls, texts, and FaceTime, not romantic dramatics, just a routine safety habit couples fall into. Inside Bird Dog, the scene is fluorescent and loud, then abruptly ordinary again when someone decides to go home. There's no foreshadowing in her behavior that night, only the familiar rhythm of leaving, checking a phone, stepping outside, waiting where rides usually pull up. She's dressed for a night out. Black pants, a cream top, tan sandals. Friends will later recall her as upbeat, present, planning her weekend the way seniors do when graduation is close enough to taste. The camera systems in entertainment districts are designed for theft and fights, not for what comes next. The record begins as a nightlife log, then hardens into evidence. 5 Points at closing time is a procession of goodbyes. Students calling rides, couples arguing, friends laughing too loud. Nothing distinguishes Samantha's departure from 1,000 others that month. She waits under the awning where the streetlight pools brightest. She checks her phone. She trusts the system the way everyone does. Routine is not protection. It only makes the final moment look normal. At 2:04 a.m., a call is placed that will later read like a time-stamped farewell. At approximately 2:04 a.m. on 29 March 2019, Samantha calls Corbishley and says she has ordered an Uber to take her back to the Hub on Main Street, her off-campus apartment complex. The call ends. Corbishley continues monitoring her location through Find My Friends, because that was their established practice on nights out. It's a small digital tether, the kind that feels intrusive until it becomes essential. Here is the detail that later becomes tragic context. Reporting at the time noted that her actual Uber driver canceled the ride when she didn't appear at the pickup point. A mundane rideshare outcome that, in this case, becomes part of the evidentiary gap. The real ride leaves without her. Another car arrives. The driver has no connection to any rideshare service. The car has no illuminated placard in the window, no company branding, nothing that would trigger caution in someone expecting a ride they've already paid for. At 2:09 a.m., surveillance shows a black Chevrolet Impala pulling into the space beside her. Samantha, phone still in hand, steps into the back seat. Pedestrians stream past. No one reacts because nothing looks like a crime. The lighting is flat. The angle is fixed. The footage will later be played in court, frame by frame, with timestamps highlighted. But in the moment, it's just another person getting into another car. The phone is still a tool, until it becomes the last thing that can place her in time. Within minutes, her location will begin moving in a direction that makes no sense for home. By late morning on 29 March 2019, Samantha's roommates realize she never returned to the hub and didn't show up for her morning shift at Liberty Tap Room, a restaurant where she worked part-time. This is how missing person cases often begin. Not with a scream, but with absence measured against a schedule. Samantha was reliable, the kind of person who texted if she was running 5 minutes late. Her silence is louder than any alarm. An officer responds to the apartment to gather information and file the missing person report. The initial response is procedural, almost routine. Young adults sometimes stay out longer than planned. Phones die. Plans change. The officer takes notes. Last known location, last known clothing, last known time. Then the bureaucracy starts moving in its own language. A BOLO, an awareness bulletin, a request for assistance. At 5:37 p.m., Columbia Police Department employees receive an internal email from investigator Chris Odom requesting help locating her. The bulletin is specific about what matters in the first hours. Last known area, last known clothing, last known time. The email includes a photograph. Samantha smiling, eyes bright, taken during better circumstances. It's the image that will later appear on news broadcasts and missing person posters. The face that transforms from student to case file. The family begins doing what families always do: calling, texting, refreshing, hoping the delay is explainable. Corbishley checks Find My Friends obsessively. Samantha's father drives from New Jersey. Her mother makes calls to hospitals. Law enforcement begins doing what it is trained to do: organize, verify, and document. Hope is emotional. Procedure is measurable. Both are forms of search. In the bulletin's phrasing, the case is still missing. The video will change that. While investigators assemble the initial report, Corbishley watches the digital trace. He later testifies that he sees Samantha's route moving south of 5 Points, the opposite direction from Bird Dog to the hub. He calls, texts, and Snapchats. No response. The phone rings through to voicemail, over and over. The same cheerful greeting that now feels like an archive. At around 2:30 a.m., her location is turned off, and the last pinned point shows Montgomery Avenue and South Ott Road in the Rosewood area, a residential neighborhood with no connection to her usual routes. This is one of the case's most important psychological contrasts. The boyfriend interprets the data through the lens of normal life. Maybe she dropped her phone in the Uber. The investigators will later interpret it through the lens of trajectory. Why would she be there at all? The gap between these two readings is the difference between hope and evidence. Corbishley's testimony will later detail the helplessness of watching a dot on a map move in the wrong direction, then disappear entirely. He describes the feeling of talking to a phone that isn't being answered, leaving messages that accumulate in silence. "I just kept thinking she'd call back any minute," he tells the court. The phone, a small rectangle of light, stops being a lifeline and becomes a boundary. On one side, real time. On the other, silence. By morning, when the missing person report is filed, the phone has been dark for hours. Digital trails don't tell you what happened, they tell you where to start digging. The search will return to Bird Dog, not for memories, but for footage. By the evening of 29 March, friends and family search at the last known location in Rosewood and find nothing. No phone, no trace, no witnesses who remember seeing her. They go back to the last confirmed place, Bird Dog on Hardin Street. Staff provide video surveillance from outside the bar, and on that footage, they see the irreversible moment. Samantha entering a black Chevrolet Impala. The car's make and model are clear. The license plate is partially visible. The timestamp is exact. At 7:10 p.m., the internal bolo is updated. The case now has a vehicle description and a still image. In investigative terms, the case shifts from missing person to missing with an identifiable conveyance, which changes everything. Where officers look, what they stop, what they remember when they see a matching car 2 blocks away. The photograph is distributed across law enforcement channels. A black Impala, distinctive damage patterns, last seen in 5 points at 2:09 a.m. The camera angle is static. The lighting is flat. The footage is emotionally blank. That's what makes it powerful. It documents a person entering a car as if nothing matters, precisely because she doesn't know it does. There's no struggle visible, no hesitation, just compliance with routine. She expects to be home in 10 minutes. Video doesn't raise its voice. It just refuses to forget. A patrol officer will soon spot the car, not because of genius, but because the bolo made it visible. Corbishley's testimony will later detail the helplessness of watching a dot on a map move in the wrong direction, then disappear entirely. He describes the feeling of talking to a phone that isn't being answered, leaving messages that accumulate in silence. "I just kept thinking she'd call back any minute," he tells the court. The phone, a small rectangle of light, stops being a lifeline and becomes a boundary. On one side, real time. On the other, silence. By morning, when the missing person report is filed, the phone has been dark for hours. Digital trails don't tell you what happened. They tell you where to start digging. The search will return to Bird Dog, not for memories, but for footage. By the evening of 29 March, friends and family search at the last known location in Rosewood and find nothing. No phone, no trace, no witnesses who remember seeing her. They go back to the last confirmed place, Bird Dog on Hardin Street. Staff provide video surveillance from outside the bar, and on that footage, they see the irreversible moment. Samantha entering a black Chevrolet Impala. The car's make and model are clear. The license plate is partially visible. The timestamp is exact. At 7:10 p.m., the internal bolo is updated. The case now has a vehicle description and a still image. In investigative terms, the case shifts from missing person to missing with an identifiable conveyance, which changes everything. Where officers look, what they stop, what they remember when they see a matching car 2 blocks away. The photograph is distributed across law enforcement channels. A black Impala, distinctive damage patterns, last seen in 5 points at 2:09 a.m. The camera angle is static. The lighting is flat. The footage is emotionally blank. That's what makes it powerful. It documents a person entering a car as if nothing matters, precisely because she doesn't know it does. There's no struggle visible, no hesitation, just compliance with routine. She expects to be home in 10 minutes. Video doesn't raise its voice. It just refuses to forget. A patrol officer will soon spot the car, not because of genius, but because the bolo made it visible. Officer Jeffrey Kraft begins his shift at 6 p.m. on 29 March, already aware of Samantha's disappearance and the bolo emails. By this point, the bulletin has circulated through every patrol unit in the city. Kraft is driving through 5 points, the same streets Samantha walked hours earlier, when he sees a black Impala near the intersection. The vehicle matches the description. Same make, same model, damage consistent with the surveillance photograph. He initiates a traffic stop. What happens next becomes part of the record. After the blue lights activate, the driver turns the wrong way down a one-way road, lacks identification, and there is testimony noting an odor of marijuana. Then the driver runs. The suspect, later identified as Nathaniel Rowland, abandons the vehicle and flees on foot. He is apprehended a short distance away. This is the procedural hinge. A missing person bulletin becomes a detention. A detention becomes flight. Flight narrows the universe of explanations. Innocent people panic too, but panic has patterns, and procedure is built to test them. Running from police during a traffic stop is one pattern. Turning the wrong way down a one-way street is another. Lacking identification is a third. Each detail alone might be explainable. Together, they form a sequence that investigators recognize. The camera that matters now is not the nightlife CCTV. It's the body camera, the dash camera, the incident report language that will be read later in court. When the car is searched, investigators won't be looking for a story. They'll be logging objects. The camera angle is static. The lighting is flat. The footage is emotionally blank. That's what makes it powerful. It documents a person entering a car as if nothing matters, precisely because she doesn't know it does. There's no struggle visible, no hesitation, just compliance with routine. She expects to be home in 10 minutes. Video doesn't raise its voice. It just refuses to forget. A patrol officer will soon spot the car, not because of genius, but because the bolo made it visible. Inside the Impala, investigators locate items whose normalcy is precisely what makes them incriminating. Liquid bleach, germicidal wipes, window cleaner. These are household products, the kind found in any grocery aisle. But their presence in a vehicle that fled from police hours after a woman disappeared from the same neighborhood transforms them from cleaning supplies into evidence of intent. In the passenger compartment, they find Samantha's phone, the device that tracked her location, that last lit her face outside Bird Dog, is now an exhibit sealed in plastic. They also document a large amount of blood in the passenger area and in the trunk, later confirmed through DNA analysis to belong to Samantha. The child's safety locks are activated. An engineering feature designed to protect children becomes, in this context, a confinement mechanism. The locks prevent rear doors from being opened from the inside. Public statements begin to form around the evidence. Columbia Police Chief Skip Holbrook speaks to the press, his voice measured but heavy. "We are working tirelessly to bring justice," he says. The language is careful, procedural, the way officials speak when the outcome is already clear but not yet confirmed. Holbrook describes the investigation as one of the most difficult of his career. He does not elaborate. He does not need to. The phone is still there, physically present, no longer illuminating her hands, now sealed as an exhibit. The same object that guided her to a ride now guides police to a suspect. Next, the case turns toward labs, warrants, and the slow work that makes certainty. Evidence collection follows the methods that stand up in court: documentation, swabbing, sealing, chain of custody. In trial coverage, SLED forensic serology agent Rachel Nguyen testifies about blood testing from areas inside the car, places that become important because they map struggle and contact: headrest, rear seat, seatbelt buckle. Nguyen describes the presumptive tests conducted at the scene and the confirmatory tests conducted later in the laboratory. Each location is photographed, measured, and logged. Investigators don't argue with the evidence. They ask it structured questions. Where is blood present? What transfer patterns are consistent with movement? What surfaces suggest effort to clean? The vehicle stops being the suspect's car and becomes a mobile crime scene with edges and seams and overlooked corners. Forensic teams process it with the same attention they would give a house or an alley. Every surface is a potential witness. The blood distribution tells a story without words. Spatter on the rear seat suggests violence in a confined space. Transfer patterns on the trunk liner indicate a body was moved. The presence of cleaning agents suggests awareness, planning, an attempt to erase. But blood is stubborn evidence. Luminol reveals what bleach cannot fully remove. Under ultraviolet light, the passenger area fluoresces with biological presence. The surveillance aesthetic changes here. Fewer streetlights, more lab lighting. Fewer crowds, more gloved hands. The camera watches from different angles now. Forensic photography replacing CCTV. Evidence markers replacing timestamps. In forensics, emotion is not removed. It is translated into method. The search expands beyond the car, toward what was thrown away after the night ended. Public statements begin to form around the evidence. Columbia Police Chief Skip Holbrook speaks to the press, his voice measured but heavy. "We are working tirelessly to bring justice," he says. The language is careful, procedural, the way officials speak when the outcome is already clear but not yet confirmed. Holbrook describes the investigation as one of the most difficult of his career. He does not elaborate. He does not need to. The phone is still there, physically present, no longer illuminating her hands, now sealed as an exhibit. The same object that guided her to a ride now guides police to a suspect. Next, the case turns toward labs, warrants, and the slow work that makes certainty. Search warrants extend the investigation to locations tied to the suspect's life. SLED agent Delilah Jazik testifies that she obtained a warrant from Maria Howard's home, Howard being Roland's girlfriend at the time, and collected items from a garbage area. A white sheet with blood, duct tape, and bleach wipes with blood. The items are bagged separately, labeled, and transported to the lab for analysis. Each piece of trash becomes part of the accumulation. In separate trial reporting, Roland's ex-girlfriend provides another human detail with procedural weight. She says she saw him scrubbing the car with bleach on the morning of 29 March. She describes his demeanor as unusual, focused, urgent. It's not a dramatic confession. It's the kind of observation that investigators treat as corroboration, not narrative. She remembers the smell, chemical, sharp, out of place in the early morning air. This is where the case file feels most like an autopsy of behavior. What someone buys, what someone keeps, what someone tries to erase. Receipts show purchases of cleaning supplies hours after the abduction. Surveillance from a convenience store shows Roland entering at dawn, bleach bottle in hand. Trash collection becomes archaeological, layers of disposal revealing timeline and consciousness. Cleanup is not proof of guilt by itself, until it matches the biology in the car. The next evidence will come from something even quieter: marks left by a body trying to get out. Investigators recover latent impressions from the Impala. Reporting from trial coverage notes that Josephson's footprints were found on the driver's side rear window, multiple prints consistent with pressure and movement from inside the back seat. The prints are oriented upward, toes pressed against glass, the kind of marks left by someone pushing, kicking, trying to break through. This is an evidence type that feels almost too physical for a digital age. Friction ridges, placement, direction. But that is exactly why it matters. It is a record of effort, not of intention. A camera may not see a struggle in the dark, but a window can carry it forward into daylight. Forensic experts testify about the force required to leave such impressions, the body mechanics involved, the sequence of movements they suggest. Now the recurring detail, her phone, has a counterpart: the body's attempt to escape. One is a planned tool, the other is a reflex. The phone was meant to bring her home. Her feet were trying to find another way out. Both fail. The child locks ensure the doors won't open. The tinted windows ensure no one outside can see. The prints remain as silent testimony, evidence that cannot speak but can be read. Some evidence is a message left without words. The case will next move to autopsy, where the body speaks in clinical language. This is where the case file feels most like an autopsy of behavior. What someone buys, what someone keeps, what someone tries to erase. Receipts show purchases of cleaning supplies hours after the abduction. Surveillance from a convenience store shows Roland entering at dawn, bleach bottle in hand. Trash collection becomes archaeological, layers of disposal revealing timeline and consciousness. Cleanup is not proof of guilt by itself, until it matches the biology in the car. The next evidence will come from something even quieter. Marks left by a body trying to get out. On 30 March 2019, turkey hunters discover Samantha's body in a wooded area off Haystack Road in Clarendon County, roughly 65 miles from Columbia. The location is rural, isolated, accessible only by unpaved roads. The body is found in a field, partially concealed. Investigators photograph the scene, mark evidence flags, and begin the methodical process of documentation and recovery. In court, a pathologist testifies that Samantha had more than 100 stab wounds, a documented fact that strips away any possibility of accident or misunderstanding. The injuries include defensive wounds to her hands and forearms, patterns consistent with close-range violence sustained over time. The pathologist describes the wounds in clinical language: depth, trajectory, grouping. Each detail is recorded without emotion because the record already carries the horror. Trial coverage also notes forensic testimony about what was missing and damaged. Details like torn clothing, broken nails, cuts to the hands. Small anatomical facts that become the ledger of resistance. The autopsy report runs pages long, each injury cataloged and measured. The cause of death is listed as multiple sharp force injuries. The manner of death is homicide. This chapter is deliberately clinical. The documentary tone stays restrained because the record already carries the horror. In homicide work, autopsy is not emotion. It is finality. The phone, again, sits in evidence storage. The body is no longer missing. The case is now formally what it always was. The law does not need anger to recognize a killing. It needs proof. The trial will ask one last question. Can the defense create doubt where the evidence leaves almost none? By 20 July 2021, the case enters a courtroom in Richland County under Circuit Judge Clifton Newman. Prosecutors call nearly 36 witnesses. The defense calls none, a choice that becomes its own kind of statement. The courtroom is filled with family, reporters, investigators who worked the case from the first bolo to the final report. The proceedings are methodical, each witness adding a layer to the evidentiary structure. Prosecutors present the timeline with documentary precision. The surveillance footage showing Samantha entering the Impala, the traffic stop hours later, the blood evidence, the cleaning supplies, the footprints on the window, the autopsy findings. Each piece is introduced, authenticated, and entered into the record. The defense focuses on gaps, arguments about DNA presence and what was or wasn't conclusively proven. But the prosecution answers with accumulation: the bolo, the traffic stop, the flight, the phone, the blood, the cleaning agents, the footprint impressions, the forensic chain. A key defense posture reported at trial is not a competing narrative, but an emphasis on reasonable doubt. The defense questions forensic methodology, suggests alternative explanations, points to the absence of certain evidence. But the weight of documentation is heavy. Video doesn't lie. DNA doesn't forget. Forensic patterns don't invent themselves. And then comes the line that lands hard precisely because it refuses responsibility. Before sentencing, Roland professes innocence. A statement that reads as controversial not for its content, but for its timing, after the evidentiary record has already spoken. He does not take the stand. He does not offer testimony. He simply maintains in the final moment that the wrong person is being judged. Courtrooms do not reconstruct feelings. They test facts until only one interpretation survives. The verdict arrives quickly. Then the family must speak in a room built for procedure. On 27 July 2021, the jury returns guilty verdicts for murder and kidnapping, followed by life sentencing without the possibility of parole under Judge Newman. Procedure executed with the heavy efficiency reserved for cases the evidence has already decided. The deliberation is brief. The verdict is unanimous. Newman delivers the sentence in measured tones, acknowledging the severity of the crime and the permanence of the loss. Family impact statements follow. Samantha's mother, Samantha Josephson, addresses the court with a prepared statement that she reads in a steady voice. She speaks about her daughter's plans, her kindness, her future that was stolen. "She was our light," Marcy says. "And now, that light is gone forever." Other family members speak as well. Relatives address the court with measured words spoken into microphones that do not soften anything. This is the human cost section of the file, the part that never fits neatly into an evidence log. The sentencing phase includes victim impact evidence and allocution. Roland is given the opportunity to speak. He declines. The courtroom empties slowly. The procedural weight of justice delivered, but not transformative, not healing, just final. The documentary closes where it began. Outside Bird Dog, the streetlight glare, the static camera angle, the phone glow. The last image is not a lesson or a warning. It is a time-stamped frame that records a person stepping into a car, and the silence of a system that can only chase what it can document. 2:09 a.m. The door closes. The camera keeps watching. A still frame. Samantha on the curb, phone in hand, the black Impala's rear door open, and a timestamp in the corner that never changes.